Welcome to the Madison Miller podcast. For the second time in 3 weeks, I have one of my favorites on who is amazing at horse racing and all that. And we have the Preakness coming up, so the one and only Jeff Byrnes is here. How you doing on this Thursday morning?
Doing good, Madison. Looking forward to another edition of the Preakness on Saturday.
Yep, me too. So, the first horse in the Preakness is Magato. I do not think Magato is in the Derby. Was he?
So Mugatu, he wasn't in the Derby, but he was on the also eligible list. He did need a couple of scratches to get in, but unfortunately for the connections, he did not get those scratches. So he was forced to scratch from the Kentucky Derby, but he does resurface here in the Preakness. He's the longest shot on the morning line, and most likely will be the longest shot on the field, because if you look at his resume, he's 1 for 12 in his career. He is one of the most experienced horses in the field, but only one win in 12 career starts, and that win came all the way back on November 18th at Gulfstream Park in Florida. 3 straight races he ran as safe races, 2 at Turfway Park on the synthetic, in which he was off the board. He was 5th in the Toyota Bluegrass Stakes at Keeneland on April 6th behind horses like Sierra Leone and Just a Touch, who ran in the Kentucky Derby. But it was an okay 5th, but ultimately, when you look at the complexity of this field, he is the only way I can see this horse even showing a possible sign of winning or even running in the top 3 is that he's going to need some kind of pace meltdown in front of him, which, looking at the field, especially with the scratch of Mook, we'll get to in a little bit, but it's going to be tough for him on Saturday. I'll be very surprised if he comes close to the top 4.
Yeah, so 20-1 on the morning line, and the trainer is Jeff Engler, which I didn't touch on earlier, but yeah, he is one of the longer shots on the board. Uncle Heavy's the 2 horse, also 20-1 on the morning line. Robert Reed Jr. is the trainer. Tell us about Uncle Heavy.
So Uncle Heavy, this horse ships in from Pennsylvania. He's based at Parks in near Philadelphia. He is a Pennsylvania bred, born and raised in the Pennsylvania. He's 3 for 5 in his career. He was on the Kentucky Derby trail. He did win the February 3rd Wither Stakes, Grade 3 Wither Stakes at Aqueduct back on February 3rd, in which he came from off the pace. And he did win on a track that was tending to speed, but kind of towards the end was kind of favoring closers. The race that day actually did appear on a muddy racetrack, which is something to keep an eye on because there is possible rain in the forecast on Saturday. A couple of horses in this field could benefit from off track. Uncle Heavy, I think, could be one of them. He's a horse that tends to come from behind in his races. He is probably going to be another horse that is dependent on pace. Looking at his pedigree, his sire, Social Inclusion, was a nice horse who was very good in long-distance races. And he's a horse that, to me, when you look at the way he runs and the way he strides, I think he actually wants more than the mile and 3/16 distance that he's going to get on Saturday. I think if he did make the Kentucky Derby, I think he would have ran well in there. I don't know if he would have won, but I think he would have finished in the top 10 at least. So I think no matter if he gets a pace belt down in front of him or not, I think he does have a chance of possibly being one of the closers that could come running at the end. Is it enough to win? I'm not sure. But he is coming in this race in good form. He posted back-to-back fast 4 furlong workouts. So he's coming in fresh. He hasn't run since the Wood Memorial on April 6th. But if he gets a decent enough pace in front of him, I think he could possibly be an upside chance to get into the trifecta.
Yes, Uncle Heavy, I think, is a dark horse. And I like his jockey, too. Irad Ortiz Jr. I'm a big fan of him. All right, here's a good horse. Catching Freedom. He was your pick for the Derby. He is 6-1 on the morning line. Brad Cox is his trainer, one of the best in the business. Tell us about Catching Freedom as the 2-week gap between the Derby and the Preakness and how that could affect him.
So Catching Freedom is one of 3 coming back from the Kentucky Derby. He ran a pretty troubled 4th in the Derby. He was running alongside Mystic Dan, turning for home, but the door just got completely shut on him, and he was forced to go to the inside. And by the time he got open space to run into, Mystic Dan was gone, and he couldn't catch himself. It was honestly a pretty good-looking 4th, all things considered. So Brad Cox wheels him back 2 weeks later. Brad Cox typically doesn't wheel back his horses after a short rest, especially off a 2-week layoff. Typically with his Kentucky Derby runners, he waits for the Belmont Stakes, but the fact that Catching Freedom is coming back to the Preakness shows that he bounced out of the Derby in good shape. His gallops in the mornings have looked tremendous. I think he's coming into this race with good energy. And so Brad Cox, when you look at his record, The only time in the past 5 years that he's wheeled a horse back on 2 weeks in a stakes race was a horse by the name of Tonyport, who a couple years ago was second in the Jeff Ruby Stakes, but then came back 2 weeks later and won the Lexington Stakes. So it's only one horse, but Bradcroft has done it before with the stakes horse, and that horse came back to win. So Catching Freedom, I think, does stand a very good chance of coming back and winning the Preakness Stakes. Now, with the scratch of Muth, I think that it does hurt him a little bit with terms of the pace, because I think Muth was going to press the pace a little bit. But I think his class is good enough to where he could overcome that. In the Louisiana Derby, he overcame the slow pace. He came on to win that race. And I think he could get a decent moderate pace. I wouldn't surprise if he tries to lay a little bit closer than he did in Kentucky Derby. He was very far back and turning for home, and ultimately got outrun at the end. But Catching Freedom, I think, definitely has a very good shot on Saturday.
I agree with you 100%. Muth is scratched. That's unfortunate. So the 5 horses, Mystic Dan, now is your Kentucky Derby winner. 5-2 morning line. It looks like he's the favorite. Usually the Kentucky Derby winner is usually the favorite, but I don't think Rich Strike was the favorite in the Preakness, was he?
Rich Strike actually didn't run in the Preakness. The Connections opted to skip that race because
right.
he didn't exactly bounce out of the race in the best shape in the world. He came back in the Belmont, and he actually wasn't favored in that race.
That's what I was. It was the Belmont. That's my bad.
Right. Yeah, so Mystic Dan, this horse ran he's your Kentucky Derby winner this year. He got a tremendous ride from Brian Hernandez Jr., and he got an inside trip the entire way. And when turning for home, he squeezed through possibly the tightest hole you could ever see in between Track Phantom and a couple others. And Brian Hernandez rode the rail, and it looked like he was home free before Sierra Leone and Forever Young caught up to him in that photo finish, and he held on. But, the Connections before the Preakness were initially hesitant to go. And one of the reasons why was because early in his career, on November 12th, when he won his first race, the Connections actually wheeled him back 13 days later in an allowance race at Churchill, and they finished a disappointing 5th in that race. Now, initially hesitant was because of that short 2-week turnaround as a 2-year-old, but one of the reasons why he came out of that 5th place infection, so he was he came out of the Derby that the Connections ultimately decided to go, and he's looked good in the mornings. I watched a video from galloping this morning. He seems to be liking the track. His exercise rider is Robbie Alvarado, who has won a couple of Preaknesses in the past, including on the Kenny McPeak trained Swiss Skydive. He's come out of the race well. I think he's gonna get. Surprise me. No, he's kind of a make-pat horse. It wouldn't surprise me if he's kind of because I don't think he wants like Imagination or possibly Seize the Gray, who we'll get to in a little bit, possibly get away with some slow fractions. But Mystic Dan, he's come out of the Derby well. He has a good pole position. I think the pace should kind of be in his favor. And if there is an off track, which possibly there could be, I think that really, really helps him because he won the Southwest on a very sloppy racetrack at Oakland Park. And the mile and 3/16 shouldn't be no problem for him. So I think Mystic Dan, as long as everything goes well, as long as he keeps showing good energy, I think he has a really good chance of going back-to-back here.
I think he has a good chance of going back-to-back here, too. That would be a pretty big deal. Seize the Gray is the 6th horse, 15-1 on the morning line. Dwayne Lucas is the trainer. Tell us about Seize the Gray.
So Seize the Gray, this horse has been in very good form as of late. He was on the Triple Crown Trail earlier this year. He was 3rd in the Jeff Ruby Stakes at Turfway Park back on March 23rd. He did come back, and it could be a key for the Preakness. He came back 2 weeks later to run on the Toyota Bluegrass and finished a pretty disappointing 7th in that race. Got into some traffic trouble, but didn't really show the exact same kick that he showed in the past. So he didn't qualify for the Kentucky Derby, but Wayne Lucas brought him back in the Pat Day Mile, and he won that race coming from off the pace and won that race very impressively. His jockey Jamie Torres is going to be aboard him for the Preakness. And Wayne Lucas has said that he wouldn't be surprised if this horse also showed some speed early on, like he has someone in the past. He hasn't really shown in his past couple starts, but because there could be a bit of a slow pace in this field or in this race, I can see Steve Gray being one of the early front runners to try and maybe steal this race on the front end or try to come just slightly off. I think Wayne Lucas has said it after the Fat Day Mile that maybe a mile is probably the farthest that he wants to go, or at least could be his top distance. It's a very going a mile at 3:16. I think it's going to be a very big stretch for him. But Wayne Lucas has certainly been one of the best in the business for a long time, so I think he knows what he's doing when it comes to those horses. But Cecil Gray, he's about 15-1 on the morning line. I could see him possibly going off around there, but it could be tough for him on Saturday with the time for the field, and I think the quick turnaround could hurt him.
All right. The last Derby horse in the field, Just Steel, who's in the 7th spot. He is 15-1 on the morning line. Dwayne Lucas is his trainer too. Joel Rosario is the jockey here. Tell us about Just Steel.
So Just Steel, he's the most experienced horse in the field. The Kentucky Derby was his 12th start. The Preakness will be his 13th. This will be the 6th time he has run this year, so which is by far the most of any horse in this field. Excuse me. But Just Steel, he's another one of these horses that could show early speed. He was right up on the pace in the Kentucky Derby, and he got very tired in the end. He faded to finish a very far back 17th in the race. But he has shown tendencies to bounce back after disappointing performances. He was 7th in the Rebel Stakes on February 24th back at Oakland, but then he came back a month later to finish 2nd in the Arkansas Derby, which got him the points to qualify for the Kentucky Derby. But this horse has tended to show that he can bounce back in the past. Joel Rosario being aboard him, I think it's a big plus. So I think he's got one of the best jockeys in the business. He's another one of these horses that could be prominent on the pace because you think he tends to show he could be a deep closer, hang around mid-pack, but I don't think he wants to get the leaders to get away with slow fractions. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Does the amount of races he's run 5 times again? I said 5 times he's run already this year. Does that catch up to him? I think it could possibly on Saturday. Even though maybe the more races he runs, the better he can get, but I just typically don't see it with him. Personally, I think after the Preakness, if he doesn't win, he'll get a break, but I'll be very surprised if he wins on Saturday.
All right. Tuscan Gold, the 8 horse, 8-1, so one of the favorites to win this race. Chad Brown's the trainer. Tell us about Tuscan Gold.
So Tuscan Gold, this is a newcomer for Chad Brown. This is history has shown Chad Brown with horses skipping the Derby and running into Preakness have been very good. He did a similar move with Cloud Computing in 2017, and he won the Preakness. He also did a similar move with Early Voting, who was 2nd in the Wood Memorial. Skipped Derby, ran into Preakness and won in 2022. He's now doing it here with Tuscan Gold here in 2024. And this horse's pedigree absolutely screams the mile at 3/16 distance. So I don't think that should be any problem with that. He's coming into this race in good form. He was 3rd in the Louisiana Derby behind Catching Freedom and Honor Marie, who also ran in the Kentucky Derby. So that was actually his stakes debut after winning a maiden race on January 31st. So he has shown that he can compete with the top horses in the division. I think the Preakness, he's coming in really good form. He's posted some pretty fast workouts at Belmont Park in the past couple weeks. His jockey is Tyler Gaffleone, who was aboard Sierra Leone in the Kentucky Derby. So Tuscan Gold is going to be one of these horses that is going to be right around mid-pack. I think he's going to be sitting a good trip. One of the outside posts, I think is going to really help him and benefit him. He has shown the mile and 3/16 has been no problem, given his good run in the Louisiana Derby. Now that he has stakes experience, I think he's going to be very beneficial for that. I don't really have any big concerns with him, but I think he's got a very good shot of winning. Chad Brown, obviously, he's done this move in the past and has worked a couple of times. So Tuscan Gold, I think, got a big shot on Saturday.
All right. And the last horse in the field is Imagination, who's in the 9th spot. Bob Baffert is the trainer here, 6-1 on the morning line, so one of the favorites in this race. Tell us about Imagination.
So Imagination, was supposed to be one of 2 horses for Bob Baffert. Obviously, the other move is scratched, so he's left with Imagination, who isn't a bad choice either. But Imagination, this horse has run 6 times, all in the state of California. He's never finished worse than 2nd in 6 of those starts. He won the Grade 2 San Felipe on March 3rd, in which he was 2nd throughout before passing his stablemate at the wire. In the San Diego Derby, he was 2nd being a nose behind Stronghold, in which the speed figure didn't exactly come back the fastest. Stronghold came back to finish 8th, I believe, in the Kentucky Derby. So the race, he has run good in the past. His speed figures don't tend to hold up with some of the others in here. So I think, honestly, if you ask Bob Baffert, he was probably more high on Mook than Imagination going into the Preakness, but he's coming into this race in good form. He posted some fast works over the last few weeks. And this horse is most likely, given the gate break and everything, he comes away with a good start. He will most likely be your early leader early on. So if he can get away from post 9 cleanly, and if he can get out and set fractions maybe of 23 and 4 or around 24 seconds, this horse could be dangerous on the lead. So, which is why I keep seeing horses like Seize the Gray or Justice Steele may press the pace. So, but Imagination will most likely set that pace. His jockey Frankie Dettori is making his Preakness debut. Obviously, he's one of the most renowned riders in the world, but Bob Baffert typically only sends his horse to maybe if he truly has a chance to win. Imagination, while I don't believe Bob Baffert was his first choice to send him to the Preakness, I think ultimately he could be a massive wild card in here, given what he could do with the pace. He has never run on an off track before, so that could be also a wild card. I don't think he'll have a problem handling it if it comes up a sloppy racetrack. But if he gets down and sets slow fractions, I think he could definitely be around at the end.
All right, so our favorite part, win, place, and show. So, who is going to be your winner pick for this version of the Preakness?
So my win pick, I'm going to go with Tuscan Gold, number 8. I've seen this story with Chad Brown before, with horses skipping the Derby and coming back from the Preakness fresh, and he's done it twice and he's won twice. And Tuscan Gold is coming out of a really productive race on the Louisiana Derby. Tyler Gaffleone has won the Preakness in the past on War of Will, so he knows how to get it done. And so obviously those two would make a good team together. Tuscan Gold should get a good pace in front from the chase. I think he'll swing wide up in the stretch and he'll win. Probably won't win by much, but I think he can win. Ultimately, will win it at the end. So Tuscan Gold for the win on Saturday.
All right, I'm going with the horse you picked in the Derby. I'm going to go with Catching Freedom. I think he bounces back from losing in the Derby. Like you said, he hasn't finished worse than 4th. I think that Brad Cox is a good trainer, so I'm going to go with Catching Freedom here. What about your place?
For my place, I will go with Catching Freedom. I think ultimately Catching Freedom, I think he's coming in this race in good form. He seems like he's bounced out of it well. I do worry about the pace that he could run into if it's a slow pace, but I think he's talented enough to overcome it, and I think he'll be there at the end. All
right, my runner-up. This is a hard one because I think this crop of horses is really good. So, I'm going to take for my runner-up, I'm going to go with Mystic Dan. I think that Mystic Dan is going to race another good race. I'm going to go with Mystic Dan for the 2 spot, but I think it's going to be close between him and Catching Freedom. And how about your show?
For my show, I'll go with Mystic Dan. If it does rain on Saturday, I think it definitely moves him up. So that's something definitely to keep an eye on. I do worry a little bit about the 2-week turnaround because he did do it before and he didn't come back and run well. But I think it's a different horse than he was back then, and obviously it's a shorter field, so he should get obviously a much better trip. So I'll take Mystic Dan to finish 3rd.
All right, so my show pick was really hard. It came down to 2. I thought about Tuscan Gold, but I'm going to go with a sleeper for the 3 spot. I'm going to go with Uncle Heavy. We talked about Uncle Heavy being a dark horse earlier. There's always that random longer shot that finishes in the top 3, I feel like, especially in the Preakness or the Belmont. So I'm going to go with Uncle Heavy, who is a Pennsylvania horse, so why not go with Uncle Heavy? But I think that Tuscan Gold would be a good 4th pick if you want to do the superfecta. All right, so that was fun. Black Eyed Susan. Who was your pick for the Black Eyed Susan?
So the Black Eyed Susan, good field of 8 in here. The 3 favorites in the field, Gunsong, Corposo, and Recharge. I'm not typically big fans of them because their speed figures haven't exactly come back the strongest, and they haven't exactly proven themselves at the big long distance. So my top pick in here will be the number 6. Who Could Ask for Mo? Trained by Shook McGahee, ridden by Louise Saez. She has run in the past against horses that competed in the Kentucky Oaks, and she is getting the blinkers on for the first time in this race. The blinkers should help her to keep her focus. I think that with her pedigree being by Uncle Mo out of a Bernardini mare, she should appreciate the mile and 1/8 distance. The shorter field, not a big enough class. She's 6-1 on the morning line. Wouldn't surprise me if she goes up maybe a little bit higher than that, which I hope that she does. But who could ask for Mo? I think could be in for an upset on Saturday.
Oh, I like that. All right. I'm going with Recharge. I know Recharge is one of the favorites, but I know he finished 5th the last time he raced, but it's funny, 5th different track in the last 5 races, but I like Joel Rosario. He's a good jockey, and Steve Asmussen's a good trainer, so I'm going to go with Recharge, but who could ask for Mo would be a fun, like, trifecta leg, or an exacta with Recharge, but I'm going to go with Recharge for Black Eyed Susan. So, is there any other horses you're interested in for the undercard?
So, looking at the undercard, you have the Sir Barton Stakes, which is race 10 at Pimlico. One of the horses in the field is named Ghoul's Gold, which is actually the same owner, trainer, and jockey as Mystic Dan on Saturday. So certainly some rooting interest before that. He's 8-1 on the morning line. He's coming in the race in good form. I do like him a lot. I also like the number 10 horse, Imperial Gun, for trainer Steve Asmussen and Joel Rosario. He's coming into the race off a second-place finish off a stakes race at Oaklawn Park. I think he does have an outside post, but I do think the drop in class should help him. So I like him in that spot. I also like in race 7 the Gallaret Stakes, Grade 3 Gallaret on the turf. I know there is some rain in the forecast, so hopefully the race stays on. But if it does, I do like the number 3 Blissful for trainer Cherie DeVoe. She hasn't won a stakes race yet in her career, but she's hit the board in all 4 starts, never worse than 3rd. The field isn't exactly the strongest, so even though she's 3 for 12 lifetime, she could be in line for her first stakes win on Saturday.
All right. So before we go, so the last time I had you on, the Knicks played a Game 6 closeout on the road with a 3-2 series lead and got it done. Now today, 2 weeks later, the Rangers, who were up 3-0 against the Hurricanes, now get within 3-2 and have a closeout game on the road tonight at Carolina. Let's hope that you coming on the podcast the morning of a closeout game with my team up 3-2 works again. So do you think the Rangers close out tonight, or do you think the Canes bring it back to MSG for Game 7?
Well, for Rangers fans' sake, they better close it out tonight, because I think there would be a lot of nervous energy in that building at the Garden if it comes to a Game 7. But ultimately, I think they do close it out. I just don't see this Ranger team losing 3 straight games to the Hurricanes. I mean, I know Igor Shesterkin is way too good. This Rangers team, I think, is way too good to blow a 3-0 lead. I know the Game 5 didn't exactly go their way, and really the third period was maybe the worst period they've played in a really, really long time. But I think this team is going to be motivated to close this out. So ultimately, I do think the Rangers will win in this game tonight.
I think the Rangers win tonight, too. I think the extra day of rest helps the Rangers. And that kind of, because I will never forget this. In 2015, in the Eastern Final, I know it was a long time ago, and it was a 2-day break between Game 6 and Game 7. The Rangers forced a Game 7, winning in Tampa Bay, killed Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay had a stinker. And then Tampa Bay bounces back in Game 7, wins at the Garden, and goes to the Stanley Cup Final. I mean, the 2-day break, I think, can hurt a team that it has the momentum, and the Canes have had the momentum, so I think the 2-day break can hurt them, and it could help the Rangers and Igor Shesterkin regroup after what was a bad third period the other night. So I do think the Rangers will close out tonight, and I won't be shocked if this game is kind of a blowout, because the Canes haven't had a stinker yet in the playoffs. It looked like it was going to happen against the Islanders in Game 2, but the Canes ended up coming back and winning that game. So, and it's weird because I said going into Game 5, the Rangers haven't had a stinker yet in the playoffs, and then they had a stinker. So, I won't be shocked if the Canes have a stinker tonight, but that would be a terrible stinker at the wrong time for the Canes. And the Knicks play tomorrow night. Do you think that goes 7?
I think the Knicks close that one out, too. The one thing I've learned about the Pacers is when it comes to Madison Square Garden, they play scared. I see a team that just does not enjoy playing at Madison Square Garden. So if it does get to a Game 7, I think the Knicks hopefully can win the series. But I know the Pacers will have to definitely play a lot better at home. And I think OG Anunoby is still out for Game 6 tonight, I believe.
Tomorrow night.
So, tomorrow night, I apologize. But I believe he's still out, so I think it's going to be a little bit tougher. But if the Knicks come out and play like they did in Game 5, I don't see how the Pacers can bring us back to the Garden for Game 7. But ultimately, I do think the Knicks can close it out. If Jalen Brunson has one of his game is on point again, then it's going to be over for Indiana.
I think the Knicks close out tomorrow night. It's just a gut feeling because everybody's just penciling in, oh, that's going 7. And, I mean, I've seen the Knicks win big games on the road before. All it takes is a Brunson heroic effort, and I could see him doing it. And he looks healthier than he did a week ago. So, and I think the extra day of rest will help the Knicks in this case, despite having the series lead because of the injuries. So, I think that the Knicks close out Friday night, too. It's going to be a good 2 nights for yours truly. The Giants' schedule came out last night. Did you see it?
Yeah, I did see it. I cannot believe the NFL is scheduling us on Thanksgiving again.
Right.
Against the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, like, does the NFL not like the Giants? I mean, why do they do this to us? I just don't get it. Like, there's not another team that they can do this like on Thanksgiving, but I don't know. I mean, looking at their schedule, I mean, they do play Minnesota and Washington the first 2 weeks of the year, and they could both be starting rookie quarterbacks those 2 weeks, so I don't see why they can't win those games.
Right. I thought the same thing.
I mean, they could easily start 2-0 if they play their game the right way.
Right.
But then the next few weeks after that, we get Cleveland, Dallas, Philly's in there, Cincinnati, so there's a tough stretch in there, but ultimately, right now, I have Giants as like maybe 7-10 or 8-9. I think they can be good enough to win those games because I think they actually I think their defense is actually not as bad as people make it out to be.
Oh, I agree with you.
With the addition of Brian Byrnes, Kayvon Thibodeau's been getting better. Bobby Okereke should have been a Pro Bowler last year. It's proven to be one of the best linebackers in football. I mean, I think Deontay Banks had a very good rookie season. So I mean, it's not like they have like scrubs on their defense. I think they actually have a very good defense. So ultimately, it's going to come down to Daniel Jones at the quarterback position, which, I mean, I don't know if these rumors are true that Drew Lock might actually have a chance of beating him out for the job. I really hope that's not the case because I typically don't really want to see Drew Lock as a starting quarterback. But,
right.
It is what it is if that happens. But so, yeah, the schedule, I think they said they have the 6th hardest schedule of any team in the NFL. And obviously they play the AFC North and the NFC South, if I'm not mistaken. So, and there's some games that could be better. I really wish they were not on Thanksgiving, but that's what it is. And they're going to Germany on November 10th, so they're actually unbeaten in Europe. So we'll see what happens. But early on, hopefully everything goes their way.
Yeah, I was surprised to see that they had 2 winnable games to start off the season. And that was like the first thing I thought, like, oh, wait a second, the Giants there's like a slim chance they start 2-0. Like, I don't want to say slim, but there's an okay chance that they actually start 2-0, 2 rookie quarterbacks. That was my first initial thought too. And then the Dallas Thanksgiving one was a surprise to me. But then again, last year, the Commanders were the team that went to Dallas on Thanksgiving and they got their butts kicked. And when I did my schedule predictions, I had the Eagles going to Dallas on Thanksgiving, but not the Giants. And the other surprising thing with the Giants in the schedule, I don't know if you agree with me or not, was that I did not expect them to be on Sunday Night Football this year. And there you are.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a surprise. I mean, it's against Cincinnati Bengals, so it's again a high-profile opponent. That does surprise me a little bit. One thing that did surprise me with the schedule was the game where the Eagles come to MetLife Stadium. Obviously, the Saquon's return to MetLife Stadium. I'm surprised that's a 1:00 game. I'm surprised that wasn't like a Sunday night game or a Monday night game because a lot of people would have obviously going to make a big deal out of it once that time comes. So I was a little surprised that's a 1:00 game.
And the other one that I was surprised to see was a 1:00 game was Falcons at Vikings, which is the return of Kirk Cousins to Minnesota. That's also a 1:00 game.
Yeah, that's very surprising too. I would think like that could have been like a primetime game, if not Sunday night, maybe like a Thursday night or one of those typical deals. But yeah, that's also surprising to me. That's a 1 o'clock game as well.
Yeah, that was, I think, the biggest disappointment of the schedule. The Giants Barkley game not being in primetime, or the Cousins return not being in primetime. And I thought for sure the Cousins game was going to be in primetime because remember Russell Wilson at Seattle was Monday Night Football Week 1?
Yeah, I do, and yeah, that was a huge deal, and Seattle with Geno Smith went out and won that game, so
Yep.
yeah, that was a big deal too. Yeah, that was very surprising.
Yeah, all right. Well, it was fun to have you on, and of course, we're going to have you on again for the Belmont, which is in probably 3 weeks from now, right?
Yep, it's in 3 weeks. So the Belmont actually is going to be at Saratoga this year because of renovations going on at Belmont Park. So
Oh, that's
very unique
right.
twist. I'll explain that more in the next few weeks.
Yes, absolutely. You explain that when that time comes. So it was an absolute pleasure to have you on again, and we'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
All right, thank you, Madison. Always great to come on.
Anytime.